It is February 2017. Inside a black sedan moving through the streets of San Francisco, a hidden camera is rolling. The passenger in the back seat is one of the most powerful men in Silicon Valley. His company is worth $68 billion. He has changed how 1 billion people move through cities. His name is Travis Kalanick, and right now he is losing an argument with his own driver. The driver, a man named Fozzie Camel, is talking about falling fares, about how he used to make good money driving for Uber, about how that is no longer true, about how he feels cheated. Travis Kalanick does not listen. He leans forward, his voice drops. Some people don't like to take responsibility for their own he says. They blame everything in their life on somebody else. Fozzie Camel quietly asks him to leave. Travis Kalanick gets out of the car, walks away, and says nothing more. Within hours, the video is everywhere. Every major newspaper in the world runs it. His board calls an emergency meeting. His own employees write him a letter. He will be gone in 4 months. But here's the thing nobody asks, the question that actually matters. How did a man who built a $68 billion company from 3 cars and a bad night in Paris lose it all in a dashcam video? And what does that story tell you about how he won in the first place? Who was Travis Kalanick? Travis Cordell Kalanick was born in Los Angeles in 1976. His father was a civil engineer. His mother worked in retail advertising. He was not a prodigy in the way the mythology usually works. He was not the kid who coded his first operating system at 12. He was something rarer and in the end more dangerous. He was someone who simply could not accept being told no. At UCLA, studying computer engineering, he joined a small file-sharing startup called Scour. Think Napster, but earlier and slightly more reckless. By 1998, he had dropped out of college to work on it full-time. Within 2 years, Scour had millions of users. And then the entertainment industry did what the entertainment industry does when it feels threatened. It sued. The Motion Picture Association of America, the Recording Industry Association of America, the National Music Publishers Association, and 30 other companies. They came for Scour with a number so large it barely made sense. $250 billion. That was the GDP of Sweden. That was more than Apple was worth at the time. That was every dollar Travis Kalanick would ever make, multiplied by 1,000 and then multiplied again. He was 23 years old. Scour filed for bankruptcy. The company was gone. Most people at that moment would have gone back to school, taken a job, learned their lesson. Travis Kalanick started another company. He called it Red Swoosh. It was again a file-sharing technology. He later described it with obvious satisfaction as his revenge business, the same technology the entertainment industry had sued him over, now licensed back to the same companies that had tried to destroy him. Red Swoosh was nearly a disaster, too. The IRS came after it for payroll tax violations. His co-founder quit in a bitter falling out. Google poached his last remaining engineer, leaving Kalanick coding alone. He moved back in with his parents. He ate ramen. He kept going. In 2007, Akamai Technologies bought Red Swoosh for $19 million. Travis Kalanick was 31 years old, a millionaire, and completely unafraid of fighting institutions that were much larger than him. He had just spent a decade learning how to do it. How did we get here? In December 2008, Kalanick flew to Paris for the annual LeWeb Technology Conference. With him was Garrett Camp, the founder of StumbleUpon and a man who had made enough money in the first internet wave to be genuinely frustrated when he could not get a cab. It was a winter evening, possibly snowing, definitely inconvenient. And Camp had a question. What if you could press a button on your phone and a car would come? Not a taxi dispatcher, not a phone call, a button. Camp went back to San Francisco and put $250,000 of his own money into the idea. He bought the domain ubercab.com. He recruited Kalanick as what they awkwardly called a mega-advisor. A few months later, Kalanick was running the company. He saw something in that button that Camp had framed as a luxury problem. Travis Kalanick did not see a luxury problem. He saw a broken system. He saw an industry, the taxi industry, that had been protected by regulation for 80 years and had never once been forced to compete. An industry that owned nothing except a legal right to operate, no innovation, no technology, no accountability, just a license handed down from city governments that said, you are allowed and nobody else is. He saw an industry where the asset, the car, already existed. The driver, the human being who owned that car and needed money, already existed. The roads, the infrastructure, already existed. Nothing needed to be built, it only needed to be connected. In January 2010, Camp and Kalanick ran a test in New York City. 3 black Lincoln Town cars, a small group of beta users summoning rides through a mobile app, Lower Manhattan. It worked. In May 2010, Uber Cab officially launched in San Francisco. The city's tech community, people who spent their days thinking about how broken things could be fixed, adopted it immediately. Word spread through the exact networks that mattered most: early adopters, influencers, people who told other people about things. The product was, by any measure, just a black car that arrived when you asked it to, but the experience was different in a way that immediately felt irreversible. No cash, no negotiating, no wondering if the driver knew where he was going. You got in, you got out, you walked away. Within months, UberCab had a problem. The San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency and the California Public Utilities Commission had noticed. In October 2010, they sent a cease and desist letter. UberCab, they said, was operating an illegal taxi service without a license. Travis Kalanick's response was immediate and entirely characteristic. He did not stop operating. He dropped the word cab from the name. Uber was now a technology company, not a taxi company. He was not a transportation provider. He was a software platform that connected willing drivers with willing passengers. Whether that was legal, he decided, was a conversation for the courts. In the meantime, people were using it, people loved it, and every day more of them did. The strategy had a name later, though Kalanick never called it that. The press would eventually call it launch first, legalize later. Travis Kalanick called it something simpler. He called it not asking permission. The crisis. By 2011, Uber was in New York, then Chicago, then Paris, then the rest of the world, city by city, faster than any company had ever expanded into a regulated industry. The playbook was the same every time. First, identify the city, not randomly, systematically. High smartphone penetration, weak taxi service, large population of young professionals who hated cabs, graduate students, tech workers, the urban knowledge class who already lived on their phones. Second, launch. Not with permission, with drivers, with riders, with the product in the market, building scale and loyalty before the regulators understood what had happened. Third, wait for the lawsuit, and then let the users fight it for you. Because here is what Travis Kalanick understood that nobody else in his position had understood before. Regulations are not walls, they are agreements between industries and governments about who gets to make money and who does not. Those agreements hold as long as no one has a better alternative. The moment someone has a better alternative and 100,000 people are using it every day, the agreement becomes a political problem. You cannot ban a product that your constituents love, not without paying a price. So Uber launched, the taxi unions screamed, the regulators threatened, the politicians got letters, not from Uber but from voters, from the nurse who used Uber to get to her night shift, from the father who used it at 2 in the morning when there were no cabs in his neighborhood, from the college student who used it instead of driving drunk. Kalanick had turned his customers into his lobbyists, and when that was not enough, when a city actually pushed back hard enough to threaten operations, Uber used something else. In 2014, internal documents leaked. Uber had built a tool called Greyball. Greyball used data from the Uber app itself to identify users who were likely to be regulatory investigators trying to book a ride for enforcement purposes. It looked at credit card information, device type, whether an account had been created near a government building. When it identified a likely regulator, it showed them a fake version of the app, ghost cars that never arrived. Regulators in Portland, in Paris, in South Korea, in Australia. They opened the app, they booked a ride, they waited. The car never came. Uber was actively hiding from the government using its own customers' data. The Justice Department would later investigate. Uber would acknowledge the tool and eventually discontinue it. But Greyball was not a mistake. It was not a rogue project. It was a direct expression of something central to how Travis Kalanick ran his company. The rules existed, yes. But the rules were written by people who had never imagined Uber, so the rules, in his mind, simply did not apply. The fall. By 2016, Uber was valued at $68 billion. It was in more than 400 cities across 70 countries, 3 million drivers, 75 million riders, a machine of almost incomprehensible scale, built in 6 years from 3 cars and a bad night in Paris. And Travis Kalanick was at its center, running it with the same philosophy he had always used. Move fast, don't ask. Make the product so good that stopping it becomes politically impossible. But a philosophy that wins markets can also destroy organizations. In February 2017, a former Uber engineer named Susan Fowler published a blog post. She described a workplace where sexual harassment complaints were ignored, where HR protected managers over employees, where aggression, the same aggression that had won market after market, had turned inward and become something much darker. The post went viral immediately, not because Uber was unique, but because it named something precisely. Then the dashcam video appeared, and then came the board meeting. In June 2017, 5 of Uber's major investors sent a letter to Kalanick, then on leave following the death of his mother in a boating accident. The letter asked for his resignation. Travis Kalanick, the man who had fought the taxi industry in 200 cities, who had taken on regulators in a dozen countries, who had survived a $250 billion lawsuit at 23 years old, resigned from the company he had built. He sold 90% of his shares for $2.5 billion. He walked out. What he had created remained. What he had become inside the company had made it impossible for him to stay the legacy. After leaving Uber, Travis Kalanick did what Travis Kalanick always does. He started another company, Cloud Kitchens, Ghost Kitchens, the same model. Find the asset that already exists, commercial kitchen space sitting empty in cities everywhere. Find the need that already exists, restaurant food delivered to people's homes. Connect them, cut out the expensive, regulated, incumbent layer in between. The same pattern, the same instinct, the same question. Which brings us back to what he actually saw, not just in transportation, not just in kitchens, but in every era, in every market, in every industry he looked at. He saw that most industries are not protected by quality. They are protected by inconvenience, by the gap between what people tolerate and what they actually want, by the fact that the incumbents have spent decades making it easier to accept the current system than to change it. He saw that regulation is not a wall, it is a negotiation, and the best way to win a negotiation with a regulator is to make their constituents fall in love with your product before the negotiation begins. He saw that you do not need to own the asset, you need to own the connection. The cars existed, the drivers existed. What did not exist was a single moment, a button press, that made them available to anyone, anywhere, instantly. He built that moment. Everything else followed. He saw that the hardest step is not scaling, it is starting. It is the moment you decide to operate without permission, the moment you decide the lawsuit is survivable and the opportunity is not. The moment you bet that 10,000 users who love your product are worth more than one cease and desist letter. And he understood, perhaps more clearly than anyone of his generation, that the question is never, is this legal? The question is always, who benefits if this stays illegal? That question, asked honestly, applied to any industry, any market, any moment in history, is the most valuable question a person can carry. Travis Kalanick carried it brilliantly, and then he stopped asking it about himself. The question is still right. Uber now operates in 10,000 cities. It has completed over 10 billion trips. Travis Kalanick's name is not on the door, but the door is still open. Every time you press that button, subscribe. Because every week we find another person who asked the right question before everyone else did.